Speaking of sports, man, we have so much to get into this week. You actually introduced a new segment called Back to Basics. You want to talk about what that is, and then we can dive into, what your topic is and talk about it for a little bit.
Yeah, so Back to the Basics is just like a journalism 101. So for anybody who doesn't know, the keys of journalism are who, what, when, where, why, and sometimes how. And that, I felt like there was a lot of news this week that just needed some explaining and just going right back to the basics and just starting from square one and figuring out, what is this really about? What is the who, what, when, where, why? And I actually sent a podcast episode to David because it was recommended to me. Shout out to Pablo Torre, his new podcast, Pablo Torre Finds Out. I was exposed to him watching Pardon the Interruption. He sometimes fills in if one of the normal anchors is away. And he started a podcast, I believe, less than a year ago. And he and Mike Florio, a big name in the NFL and sports world, did an episode after they got a 61-page document regarding a ruling in the NFL and its Players Association collusion case. So I was like, that doesn't make sense. Collusion, what happens in sports, but why would the players agree to keep collusion from the owners a secret? So we know the who, we know the what. This took place, I don't want to get it wrong, I believe beginning in 2022. Yes, March of 2022. And I'm trying to figure out the best way to summarize this without taking 30 minutes on it. It was all throughout the league. There's apparently a special counsel that the NFL has that basically meets with the owners during their trip to Florida or wherever for the owners meeting, where all of the owners and coaches and managers and everything like that meet. And there was apparently a presentation that was talking about guaranteed contracts to players. And we all know the shocking contract Deshaun Watson got a few years ago, a fully guaranteed $230 million from the Cleveland Browns, something that has never been seen in sports world before. And this is really what kind of sparked it, because the NFL was like, we can't do this again. We can't let all this money go away. NFL is a business, it's a show at the end of the day. And the NFL and the leaders of the NFL Players Association struck an unusual confidentiality agreement, and it hid the details of an arbitration decision on players, including what league executives had urged teams and owners to do to reduce guaranteed player compensation. And the three that are mainly involved are Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, and Russell Wilson. And when Lamar Jackson, we all thought he was kind of crazy to represent himself in these contract negotiations, which is still true. I think that everybody should have an agent and it not be a family member, because eventually he brought on his mom. But I am not the biggest fan of Lamar Jackson, which we all know. So to me, I was like, okay, this is backing up to me when, teams are not reaching out to Lamar, an MVP who is a kind of generational talent in the way that he plays. Clearly, I've grown to respect him a little bit more since 2022. But
you come a long way.
Yes.
So Flock, don't attack her. She's the messenger.
I'm progressing. But no teams were reaching out to get an MVP of the league as a free agent to come to the teams. And no offense, but teams had like Daniel Jones or Blaine Gabbert or people on there that, you can't realistically compare to Lamar Jackson. And so it goes in this document, it goes into explain how teams were basically told to not find ways to get big name players contracts with guaranteed money. And Lamar Jackson was a victim of that. And there was also, Russell Wilson was really the one that was hit the most because J.C. Tretter, who used to be the Cleveland Browns center and the president of the Players Association, basically went behind players' backs and, for lack of better words, shit talked Russell Wilson. And when he was in a new position of power, it's hard to explain that without listening to the episode because, he was eventually released from Cleveland. So you have to be an active player in order to serve on the Players Association, obviously. So when they ended up replacing some other people in the NFL's different committees, J.C. Tretter actually helped hire this president of one of the councils, who then in return gave him a position of power with the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
So that's collusion alone. And rules for how these people were hired were actually changed in this process. So there's a lot of questionable things going on. But J.C. Tretter basically shot down any chance Russell Wilson had of a giant contract. Now, obviously, he was coming, and this is the time when he was coming from trying to sign with Denver and from Seattle. No, they were traded. When he was trying to get a contract with following Denver. And, it took him forever to sign in the offseason, but eventually was able to get to the Steelers and then now with the Giants. But basically, there were text messages, emails, conversations exposed in this document that was basically all of the NFL owners working together. I shouldn't say all, a majority of the NFL owners working together to figure out ways to sign players for less money so that they profited more. They could move on from players if needed, and a lot of it stemmed around the quarterback situation. So I do really recommend listening to this episode because I don't want to go on a tangent about it. But the fact that players were hired by the NFL for these leadership positions to turn on the NFL Players Association and what these secret meetings are and the lies straight to the media and, the negative impact it's had on some of the biggest names in sports in the NFL is upsetting, I think, if you're a fan. And as a player, I don't know if they're nervous to be cut from teams or not get contracts in the future or what happens if they hit free agency. But the second that this episode came out, and it's not like there's not articles from major sports publications out on it, I'd be sharing those links. I would be talking about it. I would be holding out. I would feel so disrespected and not want to play for organizations that I know are working against me. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So that in summary is a very quick way to talk about an hour-long episode and all the articles that have come out in the last week and a half. And really shout out to Pablo Torre because, without him being on PTI, a show that I love, I would have never come across this. And, some of my friends texted me being like, yo, did you see this? Or, it was all these articles. And I was like, I wonder if anybody's talking about it. And some of the articles were like, hey, in this podcast episode, I was like, I'm going to find this. I should have probably been listening to this for ages, but I'm going to find this episode and I'm going to share it to anybody that I know will care.
Absolutely. And what we'll do is we'll definitely link it at the bottom of our when we come out with this on YouTube, just so everybody can, have an opinion for themselves. But what I'll say really quickly is that I just think that the question that should be asked is, when is enough enough? Across our league, like, we they're not even trying to hide anymore that, gambling is playing a major role in what's being decided. I mean, heck, they put a team in Las Vegas. They held a Super Bowl in Las Vegas. It's always been the owners trying to find ways, backdoors, side roads, friends, mutual enemies, to try to do anything to withhold money so that they can keep the most money that they can, because nobody likes to spend money. I don't know a person who is rich who wants to spend their money. That's just the bottom line. I don't know someone who says, oh, yeah, I got $200 million. I know I got $200 million spreadsheet. So, I mean, if I can get away with maybe 110 and, a pocket 90 of that, or if I can just trade a player for no reason because I want to salary dump them and get money back in return, or, I don't want to go over the cap or near the cap because that's more money coming out of my pocket. So that's where we are in the league. And that's why I think over the last 5 years, I've become such a player fan, because these guys, whether we want to admit it or not, there are football players that are putting their lives on the line every time the ball is snapped. I mean, they've reduced rules to try to allow players to play longer, but still you see gruesome injuries year after year where somebody's leg is tweaked and now they're out for 2 years, and then all of a sudden you see them having to fight on a prove it deal to stay in the league. And it's just kind of the nature of the beast, and where we are at right now in the NFL. And it's only, to me, it's only probably more things that are going to come out. I think I heard the podcast. I was really upset about it because I feel like these guys, I mean, it reminds me of my dad. I mean, you play your whole life to get to this moment you dream of as a kid. And the only thing we ask for, it's not like it's a sport where you're going to play for like 15, 20 years. If you're lucky, maybe 5, 6 years on average. I think that is the average, actually. 4 or 5 years is pretty much the lifespan of the NFL average wise. I'm not saying I know quarterbacks play longer, but average wise, that's pretty much the lifespan of the athlete. So it's very upsetting. But no, definitely. I mean, we could probably talk for hours. We're both trying to cram this in before works and stuff. So, but no, I'm definitely going to put it in the description below so you guys can have your own point of view on it. But definitely a lot to unpack on that for sure. Other thing I wanted to talk about today, and it goes hand in hand with football, right?